By 2013, a 31-hectare patch of cattle pasture outside São Paulo had become something that shouldn't have existed. Dense rainforest canopy, 8 waterfalls, all clean enough to drink from, toucans, wild boars, rare wild cats that hadn't been seen in this part of Brazil in decades. 40 years before, there had been one water source on this land. One single spring, and even that was slowly drying up. The man who did this had no government grant, no NGO backing, no team of ecologists telling him what to plant and when. He was a farmer, one of the only farmers in his community who wasn't running cattle. His neighbors thought he was wasting his land. Some called him crazy. For years, nothing he planted seemed to survive. He kept planting. His name was Antonio Vicente. No scientific training, no institutional support, no particular reason to believe he could pull this off. He bought the land in 1973 using credit the Brazilian military government was handing out to expand agriculture. Everyone around him used that money to clear more forest. He used it to try to bring one small forest back. What he figured out, slowly, over 40 years of failure and adjustment, is one of the simplest and least told stories in conservation. You don't need millions of dollars or a team of scientists to bring a rainforest back from the dead. You need patience, native seeds, and a willingness to let the land teach you what it needs. You also need to be willing to be wrong for a long time before you're right, without anyone telling you you're on the right track. Antonio was wrong for about 15 years. The trees kept dying. He kept planting. Then, somewhere around year 15, the land stopped fighting him. Nobody told the toucans and the wild cats to come back. They just did. The story doesn't start in 1973. It starts earlier, when Antonio was a boy growing up in the same region outside São Paulo. The land around him was being stripped, not slowly. Cattle farming was expanding across the São Paulo highlands, and clearing forest for pasture was not just acceptable. It was actively encouraged by the government, which offered subsidized credit to farmers who invested in agriculture. Trees were worthless. Grass was money. The forest that had once covered the region was disappearing field by field, pasture by pasture, in a process so gradual and so uniform that most people living through it barely noticed. Antonio noticed. He watched the water disappear as the trees did. The streams that had run through his community when he was young were slowing. Springs that families had relied on for generations were drying up. The connection was not subtle. He could trace individual water sources to the trees uphill from them and watch both decline together. His neighbors didn't see it the same way. They saw productive land producing beef, and unproductive land full of trees that couldn't feed anyone. Antonio tried to explain what he was watching, that the water was following the trees, that each cleared hillside was one less watershed functioning above the valley. He pointed at the declining streams. They weren't interested. The connections seemed abstract to people whose business was measured in kilos of beef per hectare. "You are dumb," they told him. "Planting trees is a waste of land. You won't have income. If it's full of trees, you won't have room for cows or crops." He was 23. He'd already decided it didn't matter what they thought. The land he bought in 1973 was at the far end of what was then possible to restore. It had been cleared for cattle grazing decades before Antonio got to it. The native trees were gone. The topsoil that healthy rainforest builds up over centuries, deep, dark, rich with microorganisms, had been compacted by cattle hooves and washed away by rain hitting bare ground. What was left was pale, thin, degraded pasture that could barely support the cattle it was supposed to feed, let alone trees. And the water. When Antonio took possession of the land, there was one spring left. One. The record showed the property had once had dozens of water sources, streams fed by a canopy that no longer existed, springs maintained by root systems that had been cleared away years before he arrived. His neighbors looked at this land and saw what it was. Degraded, marginal, not worth the trouble. Antonio looked at it and saw what it had been, and what it might become if he could figure out how to give it back what it had lost. He knew what the canopy had looked like here, roughly, from older accounts. He knew the springs that had once run through this property. He was trying to reverse a specific, documented, historically recent loss, not just grow trees on empty land. The first years were brutal. He planted trees, and they died. He planted more, and they died. The soil was too compacted, too depleted, too hot in the dry season for anything delicate to survive. He had no template for what he was trying to do. No researcher to call, no reforestation program to consult. So he watched. He paid attention to what survived and what didn't. He started learning, the hard way, the only way available to him, what the land would actually accept. The technique he developed wasn't complicated. It was patient. Antonio planted trees close together, not the spacing that gives each individual tree room to grow, but dense, almost crowded planting that forced the young trees to compete upward for light. Crowded canopy closed faster. Closed canopy meant shade. Shade meant the ground beneath stayed cooler and moister than exposed soil would. And in a degraded tropical pasture, where the biggest killers of young trees are heat, drought, and grass competition, shade was the difference between survival and failure. He also planted exclusively with native species, trees that belonged to this specific ecosystem, collected from seeds in the surrounding region. This mattered more than most people realized. A forest built from non-native species or generic nursery stock can look healthy from the outside while remaining ecologically hollow. Wildlife doesn't recognize it as habitat. The complex relationships between species that make a forest function don't develop, and the whole system stays fragile. Antonio's trees were from here, which meant the animals and insects and fungi from here would eventually recognize them. Then he waited. He tended the trees for up to 20 years before letting sections of the forest manage themselves. He pulled invasive grass by hand in the early years. He replanted where trees died. He kept records, which species were surviving, which were struggling, where the soil was improving. It was not a dramatic process. There was no moment when the forest suddenly appeared, no single year when visitors could point and say, "It happened here." There were just slightly more trees each year than the year before, and slightly more shade, and slightly more bird calls, and slightly more water in the ground. For the first decade, the changes were small enough that Antonio's neighbors didn't notice them at all. If stories like this one make you want to do something in your own backyard, the same logic Antonio used, applied at a scale you can actually manage, I put together a field guide for exactly that. Rewild Your Backyard covers native planting, habitat structure, and the small changes that make the biggest difference for local wildlife. Scan the QR code on screen, or find the link in the description below. Around year 15, something shifted in the water. The single spring that had been present when Antonio bought the land had been joined by others. 3, then 5, then more. The roots of the growing forest were doing what forest roots do, intercepting rainfall before it ran off the surface, pulling it down into the soil, holding it there. The water table that had collapsed when the original trees were cleared was slowly, measurably rebuilding. By the time the project was 40 years old, there were more than 20 water sources on the property. 8 of them had developed into full waterfalls, clean, flowing even in the dry season, drinkable. Land that couldn't support one reliable spring was now generating 8 cascades. Antonio had never set out to be a water conservationist. He hadn't thought about hydrological cycles when he bought this land in 1973. He had set out to grow a forest. What he discovered by doing it is that in the Mata Atlantica, the Atlantic forest biome that once covered these highlands before cattle farming stripped it, those two things are the same act. You cannot have one without the other. Bring back the trees, and the water follows. Lose the trees, and the water goes with them. His neighbors, the ones who had called him dumb for planting instead of running cattle, were watching their own water sources decline as their pastures expanded. The drying they had dismissed as normal, as weather, as something that happened. It was following the same pattern Antonio had described to them in the 1970s. The connection between canopy and water, between deforestation and drought, was becoming impossible to ignore as the region got drier every decade. Some of them started to understand what he had been trying to tell them in 1973. A few asked him how he had done it. The animals didn't wait for an invitation. Toucans arrived first, the large, loud, unmistakable birds of the Atlantic forest, with their outsized bills and their appetite for native fruits that only grow in dense forest. Their presence meant the canopy was real. Toucans don't use forest fragments or degraded scrubland. When they show up, the forest has crossed some threshold of quality that makes it genuinely habitat rather than just trees standing in a field. Antonio had been planting for over a decade at that point. The toucans were the first independent confirmation that it was working. After the toucans, squirrels, lizards, opossums, then a large rodent called the agouti, the apache in local Portuguese, a keystone seed disperser of Atlantic forest regeneration. Without the agouti, certain tree species can't establish naturally because those trees evolved to have their seeds moved by exactly this animal. When the agouti showed up, the system had reached a new level of function. Wild boars followed. And then, eventually, the cats. Wild cats. Small felids, secretive, impossible to establish without significant cover, prey, and undisturbed territory. Their presence confirmed what Antonio's water measurements had been suggesting for years. This was not a recovery project anymore. This was a functioning forest. No one released these animals. No one managed their arrival or planned their return. The forest became ready, and they came, in the order that ecosystems assemble themselves. Birds and insects first, then the small mammals, then the animals that require everything else to be present before they can survive. That's the part I find hardest to fully sit with. Antonio didn't import a functioning ecosystem. He grew the conditions, and the ecosystem assembled itself. The wild cats showed up because the forest had become real enough. Nobody planned for wild cats. Nobody needed to. Antonio Vicente was 83 years old when The Guardian interviewed him. He had planted every one of the 50,000 trees himself, or supervised their planting directly. He had no employees in the early decades, just his own labor and eventually the help of family. The neighbors who had called him dumb had mostly, over time, changed their position. Not because they came to share his philosophy, most of them still ran cattle, but because the evidence had become impossible to ignore. His land was producing water. Their land was not. His springs were flowing. Theirs were drying. He had the toucans and the wild cats. They had the dust and the eroding pasture. His land was getting richer in biological terms every year. Their land was getting poorer. "If you ask me who my family are," Antonio told the reporter, "I would say all this right here, each one of these that I planted from a seed." Conservation International Brazil's vice president, Rodrigo Medeiros, was more direct about what this meant beyond one man's land. "If everyone followed Vicente's example, our task would be a lot easier," he said. "The scale of restoration we are dealing with in Brazil is unprecedented. Without forests, water, food, and a pleasant climate are basically not possible. One man, 31 hectares, 40 years. The math is not scalable. There are not enough Antonio Vicentes in the world to reforest Brazil, one 31-hectare plot at a time. But what he established is something no government program had demonstrated at this scale. That dead Atlantic forest cattle land, stripped for decades, compacted by generations of hooves, reduced to a single drying spring, can come back, all the way back, if someone is patient enough to stay. I keep thinking about what that patience actually looks like. 40 years. Most people can't stay committed to something for 4. There is a waterfall on Antonio Vicente's land, 8 of them, that didn't exist when he bought it in 1973. The land had one drying spring then. Now it has more than 20 water sources, all flowing year-round, fed by a water table that the forest rebuilt over 40 years. The toucans that nest in the canopy above them are eating fruit from trees Antonio planted from seed. The wild cats moving through the undergrowth are using cover that didn't exist when Antonio's neighbors told him he was wasting his time. He spent 15 years being laughed at and 25 being proved right. The soil wasn't dead. It was waiting. The water wasn't gone. It was being intercepted before it could reach the aquifer. The forest hadn't forgotten how to come back. It just needed someone to stop the thing that was preventing it, and then to plant, slowly, patiently, species by species, the conditions it needed to find its way back. Antonio stayed. That turned out to be most of what was needed. Nobody saw it coming. Not his neighbors, who watched him plant trees on land they thought was finished and called him dumb for trying. Not the government that gave him deforestation money and expected him to clear something. Not even Antonio. Not fully. Not in the early years, when tree after tree died in compacted soil and he worked out why and planted again anyway. If you want to find the places where one person decided the land wasn't finished yet and turned out after 40 years to be right, subscribe. That's what Nature Recode covers every week. Next week, a different country, a different crop, and a recovery that started with a decision everyone around him thought was wrong.